what I teach in my mentorships, right? Like I always try to challenge folks on thinking, okay, what is it that you can transfer? What is it that you've done? And sometimes I have these amazing people that work in like very simple jobs, like, I don't know, maybe a restaurant, and they feel like they don't have anything to be transferred into a marketing career, for example. And I always tell them, what are you talking about? Hell no. You're there with the customer. All those insights, everything that you learned, it's invaluable for our campaigns. So all the experience in field marketing that you have is retail because you're based there, right? Interacting with the customer every day, selling something. I always try to challenge them to see that, because marketing is about the people. Communications is about the people, and we're all people and we interact with each other every day. So I guess the difference is that marketers have to listen.
Welcome to Latinx in Power, a podcast hosted by Thaisa Fernandes.
Welcome to Latinx in Power. Today, we are talking with Adriana Pirela. Adriana is not your ordinary Chief Marketing Officer, CMO. She has conquered markets from the US to the Caribbean, showcasing her prowess in boosting revenue and mastering customer acquisition. She's not just about numbers. Adriana is a brand building maestro, celebrated for her strategies that elevates retention and cut acquisition costs. So excited with this conversation. Welcome, Adriana.
Wow, Thaisa. No pressure with that intro. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. In this episode, we will explore Adriana's Caribbean roots to her role as CMO³. We are going to talk about that, so we're going to learn what this means, talking about her pivotal career moments, mentorship initiatives, and challenges faced by women in leadership. We will uncover the global influences shaping her strategies, among other fascinating insights. And what does it mean to be a Latina in a Caribbean for you?
Wow, that's a good question. You know what? Well, obviously, I was born in Venezuela, so I consider myself Caribbean. And I think that the Latin Caribbean community, right, in general, both of us, English and Spanish, we have a lot of similarities, right? We're very warm people. We're very welcoming people. We're also very passionate people, which also defines us as customers, right? And I think in general, like, we're very curious people. We want more of life. I think a lot of us like dream with emigrating somewhere else, or like follow a path that is bigger than just the country that we're in or that we were from. And I think that is what makes us really fascinating, right? We want to learn about the world. We're very open to what the world has to offer. So I think that is something that we have in similar way, and we share Caribbean, English speaking and Spanish speaking, and Latin in general, right?
Incredible. I love that. Passionate and dreaming about achieving things that sometimes...
that is true.
Yeah, that's incredible. That sometimes requires like moving and living different places, which is awesome. So I love that. I love this question, and I love the answers that I got. And I want to ask you, can you take us back to the beginning of your career and what inspired you to pursue a path in marketing? And how did you navigate your early professional years?
The beginning of my career, wow, that's interesting. It's funny because when I read the questions that you sent me before, I was thinking about it, because it's something that you don't think about it so often, right? And you tend to forget what it took to be here. And well, my career started by being an immigrant, moving to another country with, I would say, half the language, just the basics, with a career from a country that most people wouldn't know about, and asked me where it's located at. Trying to guess, and like starting again, right? Like marked by this, by being forced, because I would say as a Venezuelan, obviously being forced of leaving my country and restarting in a different place. Obviously, as I said, as a Latin Caribbean girl, I always dreamt of moving abroad and having different experiences in, like enrich culture in my own way and somehow have an impact broader than in my country. But one thing is to leave because you want to leave, and another thing is leaving because you have to. And those are two very different things. So I would say my career started, yeah, as an immigrant that probably no many people believed in, from a country that, as I said, people didn't know about, in a situation where there was no plan B. And I wasn't able to just go back home if I failed. So I just had to succeed. And right now that sounds like something that is or was probably easy achieved by me, but it wasn't. It wasn't. There was a lot of fear. There was also a lot of passion, as I said before. There was also a lot of enthusiasm. There's always this warm energy that makes us who we are, that makes us stand out where we go to, that thank God I haven't lost. And I try to always continue to be very authentic to my Latina Caribbean roots. But yeah, it wasn't an easy start. Definitely one full with dreams that had to be achieved because going back home wasn't an option. So that was the
Incredible.
start, Thaisa.
Yeah, yeah. I love what you said in the beginning of reflecting in this question. A lot of people share that with me, and I love this exercise of reflecting our lives and our careers. And I think it's something that might not come naturally for us.
Yeah, we don't really stop much, right? To think about us and what we've achieved, and sometimes pat ourselves in the back a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the moment, Adriana. You should both hands.
Thank you.
And why marketing? Like what, like, can you tell more about
Why
why did you
marketing?
decide
You're gonna laugh
that?
about this one. This one is very crazy. Okay. The reason behind marketing is I wanted to be a doctor. And I decided that I was going to study something in between. My parents were always like, the kind of parents who will be like, while you get into the medicine school or whatever, you have to do something else. Because normally in my country, the test for the medical school is actually later in the year after you finish high school. So for them, it was very important that I started studying something because they didn't want to have anybody at home, any of us, me or my brother, just doing nothing, right? And they were like, nope, you have to study something. And I remember my dad saying, hey, what about if you apply to like the other career that have the highest score, that in that moment didn't include physics or chemics, right? I was studying those for the other test, but it had language and math. So he was like, if you apply to that and you get in, you already know that that part is covered and you keep on studying the other things for the other test. And in the meantime, you entertain yourself going to university and you're learning things. And I was like, wow, okay, exactly not necessarily my plan, but let's do it. And by chance, I just got into communications. That was a very high demanded career in my country in that moment, the second hardest test anyway. And I just decided to go with the flow and actually, follow his advice to, be warm up always with my knowledge and stuff. And I just started attending the classes, and I just felt like it was so easy for me, right? Like that it was probably something that was very natural for me to be able to communicate, to be able to be creative, to understand also behavior of others, to be able to, fulfill whatever projects I had from the communications perspective or advertising perspective, that I end up staying. And I always think, what would have been of me if I would have been a doctor? And then I think, well, probably what really called my attention from being a doctor was the fact that you get to interact with others and that you have an impact in their life, a direct impact. And I felt like somehow with my campaigns and the career that I've built, I still had the opportunity to do that. I still had the opportunity to impact other people's lives, especially in like the most emerging markets, people that really needed the solutions that we were creating for them, people that really needed access to technology to change their lives. And that through career campaigns and different projects that I've worked on, we end up teaching how to, maximize the resources that they have in hand. So at the end, I think it worked out pretty well. And maybe my doctor friends would say like, I didn't know we have nothing in common. Or maybe they would say, totally, that's exactly what it is. We wanted to create an impact too. Who knows? I haven't even shared with anybody that is a doctor yet my story. But that's how marketing started. And it just felt so natural. That was just it. It made me feel home, I guess. So I decided to stay and pursue a career in communications, and that's it. And that's the beginning of everything.
Incredible. That's incredible. And I love when I talk with a lot of people and some people who want to transition to tech from like totally different professions. And sometimes they're like, they don't have anything in common. And I love that you did that because there's certain skills that you can translate to totally different roles. So this
And
is
that applies to
incredible.
regular day-to-day, Thaisa. That applies, that it's part of like what I teach in my mentorships, right? Like I always try to challenge folks on thinking, okay, what is it that you can transfer? What is it that you've done? And sometimes I have these amazing people that work in like very simple jobs, like I don't know, maybe a restaurant, and they feel like they don't have anything to be transferred into a marketing career, for example. And I always tell them, what are you talking about? Hell no. You're there with the customer. All those insights, everything that you've learned, it's invaluable for our campaigns. So all the experience in field marketing that you have, in retail, because you're based there, right? Interacting with the customer every day, selling something. I like I always try to challenge them to see that, because marketing is about the people, communications is about the people, and we're all people and we interact with each other every day. So I guess the difference is that marketers have to listen
Yeah.
because they're trying to get their message across. And sometimes we're going through life in a very automatic pilot kind of mode, and we might not be listening. But a lot of what people does is very much transferable to any marketing activity or initiative, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. This is a great reminder for folks listening to us to do this exercise. And if they are looking for a job, do this exercise, include the results in your storytelling when you are interviewing.
Absolutely.
And if you're like transitioning internally in between roles at your current company, use that as well. Never forget about that and use storytelling to tell your story in the right way, I feel so.
Exactly, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And if you feel like something is just like it flows naturally, like it did to me, and it might not be your career where you started at, but also there's a role that you feel that you can fill in, or there's, the opportunity to start getting involved into a different area that you feel like it just flows for you, do it. Try it, because everything you learn out there, trust me, somehow it impacts what we do as marketers. And ultimately, we're all customers, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as a chief marketing officer, CMO, you excel in financial service, SaaS, and telecommunications. What common thread do you find in successfully driving marketing strategies across such different sectors?
It's very interesting because all these sectors are so hot today, right? When I started working in telecom like 19 or 18 years ago, it wasn't as hot as it is today, right? And then all these things that have emerged from the telecommunications industry, right? Like even financial services, right? Everything that we do right now, mobile, sort of came from the ability of us as users to do more from our phones, right? To do more remotely. And then same thing about SaaS, right? So I think that for me, it's been just a very exciting journey, but also a very, I would say, rich one, because I've been touching all these industries that have very much in common. And ultimately, it is about taking advantage of the opportunities that you have to impact the customer directly in a, I would say, more one-on-one space. If you think about mobile money that you might use, I don't know, let me mention one. The one that comes to my head is Revolut. And maybe for folks in the US, it doesn't mean much. In Brazil, is actually becoming pretty big. And it's a mobile wallet from Europe. But there's many others, right? Apple Pay. for example, and then, or even maybe your bank app, and you think, what is it that makes you stick to these apps? What is it that makes you use them, aside from the fact that you can send money, but you can send money through other methods to each other, or you can just go to the bank and do a deposit like you used to do it. It is the fact that it's very convenient, right? It is the fact that it's very simple. It's also the fact that it is in your hands all the time. So, and there's nothing more intrusive than this little device over here that I've sold tons of. But then ultimately, aside from being addictive and being a little bit disruptive, it's also a very useful tool, right? And have changed the world and have changed the way we do things. So I think that opportunity to interact with the customers more one-on-one in a very direct way, having the opportunity to, from the telecommunications perspective, have their phone number, send them a text, tell them about something that's relevant, let them know that they're probably like out of balance, so they won't be able to call. Or even like, for example, from the mobile wallet perspective or mobile money perspective, the fact that I tell you, you know what, I think there's an alert for fraud, or your transaction went through, or you know what, your account is out of balance, you need to refill, or you know what, you are in a store and you're trying to buy something with your wallet, and then I immediately push you a notification about the possibility of having credits, for example, and applying for credit right there, or things like that, right? They're very one-on-one. They're direct communication to the consumer. They're relevant because they are about you. And then this takes me to something else that I know we're going to discuss about data. And it is very common, right, transversally through these three different industries, that the usage of data is probably much more aggressive and much more real life and much more relatable than it is in other industries, right? So I think that's what they have in common, is that opportunity to communicate one-on-one, is that the fact that it's also everything pretty much remote. So that also changed the way customers behave. And the fact that it's in your hands, right? So we have to be ready to be relevant and compete with other apps, with other needs, with other phone calls, with other programs that you're taking online all the time. So how do we do to always be relevant? And it's about getting to know you, getting to know the customer.
Incredible. I love that. I love that. And we are going to get more into the data side of things. But before that, I wanted to ask you, can you share more about this concept, CMO 3 times, and what it means for you? Tell us.
Yes, of course, yes. Um, we were discussing a little bit offline before that mentorship and like somehow giving back to the community is one of those things that really excite me when I'm doing a mentorship session, or I have the opportunity to impact a mentee's life. It really makes me feel like I'm in my happy place. Like, once again, it makes me feel like I felt back in the day 20 years ago. It's just very natural. It just flows, right? And one of the things that I started exploring a few years ago, right, is the opportunity to mentor others, is the opportunity to try to find a way to give back to the community. And when I was in the Caribbean, stationed there for a while in the English Caribbean, specifically in St. Lucia, um, I had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people that actually needed advice for their small businesses, for their careers, to explore new job opportunities, all kinds of different things, right? And I wouldn't say that over there people would have access or would look for access to this kind of tools that are more remote, kind of international tools. They like to feel like they're getting advice first from someone that understands what they're going through, that is there, that they trust. And it started happening to me very naturally that friends would ask me, do you mind advising this person? Or, and I'm going to mention this, and I know she's going to be very happy when she listens to this podcast, but my Pilates instructor, I'm a fan of Pilates, and I have the best instructor in the world. We still do a lot of remote sessions, but in St. Lucia, we used to do sessions every day together, right? And she would always have like the stories about how she wanted to maximize her business, take her to the next level, or she wanted to open a studio. And somehow I started becoming momager. And she started to share with me a lot. And then she was like, I have this other friend I want to talk to you about her nail business. And it just started flowing, right? Even people at the office, even the person who nominated me today to be here, right? Will look for advice sometimes. So I just felt like it was something that I could just easily give back to people and that I enjoy. So mentorship started to become part of my life and a very important one where I feel really happy at. And then everything that is related to motherhood, right? Obviously, is another one of the key things that I always try to encourage people on, right? Because I think as women, and sometimes even as dads, right? My husband was a staying-home dad for 5 years to support me on my career. So I know that sometimes he was even going through the same challenges we go through as women, right? Um, you feel like you cannot have it all. And I think, especially in this fast-paced industries, especially tech, especially financial, maybe industry, women feel like they have to choose between having a successful career and having a family or having even a partner. Don't take it that far. And they feel like the stereotype that it's been created is for you to be successful as women, you have to lose your feminine side. You have to embrace a male side. You have to behave a different way. You cannot be sexy anymore. And certainly you cannot be a mom or a partner or be distracted by anything else because if not, you won't be successful. And one of the things that I also talk in my mentorships about is exactly about that. It's about becoming your own chief mama officer. You are in control and that is something that I think I've mastered. Every day I'm learning. Every day I'm trying to be a better parent, to be more involved. But at the same time, I also try to show people that you can have it all. It might not be perfect at all times, but yes, you can have it all. And you don't have to lose your feminine side, and you don't have to stop being the Latin Caribbean crazy lady that is always smiling. Doesn't matter what happens, still smiling. So, or at least trying. You don't have to lose that. You actually, in the moment that things that were previously defined or understood as barrier or challenges, and they become an asset, and you learn how to use it in your advantage, is the moment when you break the glass ceiling. So I always want to talk about that. I always want to encourage people and women to think broader than just the career, and also thinking that whenever you have a family, and this is even for employers and me as an employer every day, when you have a family, when you have a partner, when you have a life aside from work, first of all, you have skills that you're learning as well, like be multitasking for sure, that are transferable as well, right? But second of all, you have a big commitment with other people to make them proud. And you think every day about the time that you take away from doing things with them to do things for your career that ultimately you expect that will have a bigger impact to make them proud. So it's all worth it. So I think from the chief mama officer perspective, uh, yes, I want to empower women. I want to encourage them to be in control, and men as well, right? Is if they feel like having a career and a family is something that they can't manage, I want to prove that they can. And then ultimately, well, obviously, my CMO role in the marketing end, right, as chief marketing officer, that is an area that I enjoy very much. That is an area that I feel like I'm learning from every day. And I think the day I stop learning probably is the day that I'm not going to like it anymore. It's ultimately, what makes me me. That chief marketing officer is who I am professionally, is what I like to do. I want to be in control of that career. I want to be in control of my space as a mom and be that chief mama officer or become, because every day I learn more, I become more proficient. I go through challenges where I forget who I am as well. And then I go back to, hell no, I'm this chief mama officer. I can do it all. And then obviously the chief mentorship officer, it's the other role that I want to play, right? I want to mentor people. It's my passion. I already discovered that it's what I want to do to impact the community. So ultimately, when we combine all those roles, is where CMO3 was born. And I think a lot of you guys in general that are listening to us today and watching us today, probably feel that you also want to have an impact in many different areas, and you might feel it's overwhelming or you can't do it. But once again, I gotta tell you, I'm a CMO3. You can be a CMO3 too.
Incredible. I love everything that you said. I feel it's so important to be talking about this, and I feel we don't talk enough. And especially this sense where I feel that a lot of times we are so focused in our careers that we think, oh, I cannot have a family, or it would be hard to have a partner because my work consumes all my life. And for folks who want to have a family, who have a family, it's even more challenging. And I feel you brought another interesting thing, that the sense that you can be yourself at work and your personal life. And sometimes we feel that we cannot be ourselves. And especially I feel as a Caribbean person, as a Latina person, we know that there's like all those stereotypes that might apply to you
Yes,
and might
yes,
not, and
yes,
how
yes,
damaging this is. And
yes,
at the same
yes.
time, how sometimes you need to think consciously about that and be strategic about that. I will share an example. For me, I'm a program manager, and I'm very kind. I'm very nice to person because this is just what I believe in, who I am. And I know that sometimes people might perceive me as, oh, she's too nice. She's a
Oh
program
yeah. Oh my
manager.
God, that
She
happens
won't
to me all the
deliver.
time.
Yeah. And now I'm like, this is my conscious choice to be myself. If the person thinks that I'm not able to deliver, I'm going to show them, because I have been doing that my entire career. I have always been an overachiever in all my jobs. So I know that sometimes it might be their first impression, but not the last. And I'm conscious about that. And I think I wanted to invite folks to think about that
Yeah,
and do this
yeah.
conscious choice and strategic choice. So like being yourself, but at the same time, thinking about all the other factors. I love to hear more from you. Like,
No, absolutely, absolutely, Thaisa. And now that you mentioned that, um, for me, obviously, I've worked in many different industries, many different markets, also for a long time in the US, Asia, and being managed by a lot of people from different places in the world, right? A lot of them Anglo, a lot of them Asian, for example. Not many, by the way, Latin, Caribbean people, which is something that I want to have an impact on and change, hopefully. Uh, but yes, I guess the trend is to try to adapt, is to try to become one more. My thing is that as a Latin Caribbean woman, I don't want to be one more. I want to be me. I want all the attention. Eh, and that is something so typical from us, right? And at the beginning, I agree with you completely. We're very kind people. And honestly, I try to kill them with kindness, as Selena would say all the time. Um, But ultimately, yes, it's perceived sometimes as a little bit overwhelming for other cultures. And ultimately, what I want to prove to them, and I think always ends up happening, is that it's not it's not a character. I'm not playing a role. This is me. This is how I behave. This is how I'll always behave. And sometimes they see me interacting with somebody. Our security guard in St. Lucia, who by the way still texts me because we're very good friends. In the office we had a security guard. His name is Patrick, and I adored him. He's fantastic. He always protected me every night when I was leaving late. He was there for me, such a gentleman. And we always had like the best conversations, and we're still friends, right? And I would behave exactly the same way I behave with Patrick that I would behave with our global CEO of the company. And I know when CEOs that have worked with me will listen to this interview, they'll say, that is absolutely true because I'm always the same. And that doesn't mean that you don't know how to read the room. That's a different conversation. Um, but it means that you're always true to yourself and that people can rely on who you are because they know you. And ultimately, that end up meaning also that they understand that you're actually just a good person. And that is your regular behavior. And it's not an act. So, but it takes a while to prove that. It takes a while that because you're kind and because you um, are thankful, because that's another thing that I've heard questions about, or sometimes even, criticized for being too thankful. Imagine that, for saying thank you too much. Embracing what other people does to me. It's a problem. So, but yeah, ultimately they realize it's just who we are. It's just the way Latin Caribbean people have been raised to be. And it's something that I love and that I constantly remind my kids that I don't want them to forget. And I think it takes you places. I actually think it's what allows all these people not to forget about me, to always have me top of mind, and to always think I'm always the positive person who will bring up something constructive, a solution to the table, versus in other cultures, people sometimes is very rigid and they don't feel like it's their problem anymore. If it cannot be done, it won't be done. I think the Latin Caribbean people in general, we've gone through so much, right? We see so much in our countries. The grass doesn't look as green as it looks right now outside of my house in Arkansas. Eh, Probably not. So you see all these things and you know that you have to do a bigger effort sometimes than other people, not taking away from other cultures and the efforts that they do. But when the environment is more organized, I guess the effort and the barriers become less. Versus in our environments, everything is happening at the same time, and anything can happen, including you having to leave your country from one day to the other, like I did.
Yeah.
So when you're prepared for those things, I think that makes you a great asset also for the company, because you're always the person who's thinking about different scenarios and always have a plan B. So why not embrace that about us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, there's also the impact of colonization and what they did
Of course,
with our
of
own
course,
countries. And this is just another level and another
of
discussion. But
course, of course. But yeah, it's true, it's true, it's true.
yeah.
It
And
made us who we are, and yes, we're different,
yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
that
I
is
love this
okay.
conversation. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. That's okay. And coming
So
back to the data conversation, I feel this conversation is so, so important, and it might not come naturally for a lot of folks to think about data and analyze data and bring this to everything you do and the conversations that you have. So I wanted to ask you, how crucial is the balance between data-driven marketing and creating a compelling brand narrative, and perhaps what tips you have for the folks listening to us?
these days, data is everything. And if you think about us marketers, right? Ultimately, what we're trying to do is always modify behavior, guide people to behave in a certain way, right? Um, and get them to understand products, and also get that demand from them, right? Understand what they need. And all of that is ultimately related to data. And every day we're becoming more professional and efficient on that end, especially in the industries that I'm in, maybe even more, because we have access to a lot of data on the customer behavior through the phones, for example, through the apps, through the web. So we sort of use a lot of that data to understand your behavior and trying to come up with better products that fit your lifestyle, that feed your needs, that feed into or fill in gaps of um, solutions that we see you that you're constantly using and maybe you might want more from. Um, and aside from that, there's obviously this piece of research and analytics data that will come also from the market to understand what customers want. So it's not only the data that we have access to from the different platforms that you interact with the brands on, but it's also trying to understand the market and learning from the market. That is also relevant, very relevant for what we do. And aside from that is using that data as well, not only to craft the messages, to design the products, to understand the challenges, to come up with solutions for barriers of usage, or, sort out churn, but it's also about becoming more relevant in the day-to-day life of the consumer and competing with multiple messages and multiple brands that are out there trying to communicate with them, right? Especially these days that in-app push notifications are becoming a lot more efficient and a lot more relevant in the space of communications. SMS as well, they've always been there, depending on the industry, they're more effective or not, but they're there. Email, everything that we do that ultimately it's intrusive somehow into what you're doing has to be very relevant, has to be triggered by an action. And so that way you consider that we are somehow predicting what you need as brands. And I think that understanding that game and playing that game for industries that are probably less proficient on data management and usage of data for communications than telco and SaaS and obviously mobile money that by excellence are probably the pioneers on using data and communicating with customers in a more direct one-on-one way. It's the moment to start learning. It's the moment for those industries to start stepping in that game. And it's the moment for all of us to keep on learning every day because new solutions are coming up every day and customers want every day more relevant messages. And there's also more brands out there, more messages that we're competing with every day. So I think the magic of working in mostly mobile environments, because we also work on web environments, but mostly mobile these days, is the fact that, as I said before, you have your phone every day in your hands all the time. So the opportunities to interact with you as a customer are infinite. We just have to be very careful on what is that message that we're going to put out there, and is this really relevant and how it responds to the needs of the customers. But yeah, I guess like these days, data is impacting highly the narrative of our brands and the storytelling around them. And we're listening to customers a lot more through data that either we capture or they share with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great overview and a great reminder for the folks listening to us. And I wanted to ask you, in your experience, what are the common misconceptions of even challenges that women face in leadership roles, and how can they be addressed? A million
Wow,
dollars
wow, that
question.
question. That's a big one. That's a big one. I think the challenges that we face, and when I say we face, is because I face them too. Please don't take me wrong. One thing is to get to the top, and another thing is to try to maintain yourself there and fighting for it. That takes every day's effort. Um, Definitely is in a world that is dominated still by men, and depending on the industry, but the industries that I work for and on are mostly dominated by men still. Um, it's hard to be taken seriously sometimes, and it's not about the knowledge, it's about the behavior. They, as I said before, sometimes expect us to behave as a man. And when we don't, then we're not taken very seriously because either you're too emotional, um, you're hormonal. I've heard that too. Um, or you just like to fight because you're women and we just fight over everything. When you're trying to expose a point, when you're trying to come across not necessarily aggressive, but assertive, that is the perception a lot of times. And we're not probably measured with the same, rule as everybody else. Sometimes in leadership, even the fact that we're kind leaders, that even what makes us, for example, a lot of the motherhood learnings that you get from your life, trying to multitask, trying to maybe sometimes embrace the growth of employees and dedicate time to that, or allowing that a more personal goal to somehow grow your personnel might also be perceived as a problem, like somebody that is distracted, like somebody that is not completely focused just on the business and cold enough to let go and just rehire. And All of those are definitely mistakes. The biggest asset of a company is their people. And trust me, I'm very assertive when I have to fire people. But I will always try to make things work. Because as a leader, as a manager, my job is not to manage, fire, and hire. My job is to make people grow. And part of my job is to make them work. And when they don't, that reflects on me. But in a world where men have been, I would say, raised in a different way, right? That like they feel like they have to be in control, that there shouldn't be any distractions, that they come and deliver, that they don't feel like multitasking because once again, that means being distracted. We cannot blame them for thinking that way when they become senior leaders, right? And ultimately, what I try to do is I try to focus on those challenges and try to see how would they become an advantage for me. And I'm very strategic, and I think women have to be very strategic because we wear many hats. And sometimes guys, I'm sorry, guys, I love you all, but they're not very strategic, and they know that. You give them one task and one task only, and that's all they can do. So in my case, while they're commenting about me being hormonal or me being too kind or me being too thankful, which is ridiculous, um, I'm strategizing in my head how to use that to my advantage, how to say I'm a better leader than you are, and eventually maybe become your boss. Surprise. It have happened. So, or fire you. That have happened too. And that doesn't only apply to men, right? And this is the sad reality. There's a lot of women that feel that way too because they've gotten into that trap of thinking that they have to become a man, that we don't have to care about each other, that we don't come to work to establish any kind of relationship, that people is here to do the job that we request and that's it. And this is 9 to 5. And it's not the place that you spend most of your time in during the day where you're supposed to be doing something that either you love or you're learning from or both. And that is an even sadder reality. And that is something that I find constantly in my different roles. Not only men that sometimes will have a misconception of us, but also women, also women. And even the fact that you have a personal life, it's something that you're judged about, especially by women. So that's why I feel like my mission is to change that perception for the women of the future, is to collaborate mentoring the new generations and tell them that they can have it all. So they don't go through life not only not having them themselves, but also judging others for having it.
Yeah. And also removing this scarcity mindset that is just not helping. We need to change that, and we need to talk about that too.
And
Thank you
then there
so
is the
much for
guys, right? There's
sharing.
the guys also that are amazing leaders and they just like, they tell you openly, you know what? You can do this better than we do it. You are going to do it. And you're like, finally, somebody realized. So, no, I've had also fantastic man leaders. Actually, I'm working with one that I really, really like because he's also young and I feel like I can add a lot to his plate, even though sometimes I feel like I'm a lot to handle. So, but it's a pleasure to work with. And yeah, also I guess because the newer generation, he's hungry for what women have to offer in these senior positions as well. So that keeps me very excited. But yeah, there's always somebody. And it's even sadder when it's another woman.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And which resource helped you in your journey that you wanted to share with us today?
Wow, resources. People. People. Everything is about the people. The world is just made out of people. And everything we do depends on others. And I think my biggest resource is my network of support, right? People ask me sometimes, and even like in other interviews or my mentorship sessions, um, they ask me, do you feel the same way we do sometimes? Do you feel like you need a mentor? do you have an advisor? And the answer is, I have multiple, not one. And I couldn't live without them. And that even includes the moms. I have this very special group of moms that have welcomed me in this new place that I moved to in April last year, because we're just a crazy family that moves around like crazy. And everywhere we go to, we have to, rebuild our life, right? And there's this amazing group of moms that pretty much adopted me. And they're part of my mentor group, right? They mentor me about mom things and how to be a better mom, and they're my support group, and they help me, right? And they pick up the kids when I can't, and it's a group of women that feel so proud of me and the things that I'm achieving as well. So, and that is a perfect example of the opposite that we commented, right? How do they empower me and help me to be who I'm meant to be, because they're women and they want me to succeed because I'm one of them, right? And they support me sometimes as a mom as well. And then I have all these like mentors that are like from my professional life, right? That have known me for many years. Some of them also new, that advise me on different topics, right? And they're part of my support group. And then the people that works with me, what would I be without them? Nothing. And I think, as I mentioned to you before, I feel very proud that one of my ex-employees, ex-direct reports, was the one who nominated me for this podcast. That means the world to me, because that's what I would like to make them feel like they're so important. Like, this is real, and the connection that we have is real. And whatever we build working together is real to me. And they are the resources. They are my biggest resources. There's nothing, of course, we read books and we listen to podcasts and like, but one of the things that I think I like about, for example, mentorship, and sorry that I'm a broken record about mentorship, but I think mentorship is something that happens every day without even us noticing, right? I think it's happening right now between both of us. So, but ultimately, something that I like about what I do is that I don't do it as a group. I do it one-on-one, and I take my time. And I think it's the same thing with like the multiple resources that help me. They take their time. Even my employees, they take their time. They work one-on-one with me. They teach me every day. They diagnose me on the challenges and gaps that I might have. And they help me becoming a better professional, a better leader, a better marketer. And that is something that no book, no theory, no course can replace. Which doesn't mean that I still take courses that, obviously, if you look at my resume, you'll say like, Adri, but you've been taking courses like for the last 10 years all the time. Of course, because that is also another responsibility that I have as a leader, to bring knowledge that I acquire somewhere else and transfer it, right? And yes, of course, the universities are there for that. And I'm a strong believer in academics. I know these days it's like nobody works on what they studied, or nobody, I work on what I studied, and I like it. And I think like you still have to learn on the academic sense, which doesn't mean that you cannot learn on the more non-traditional way. I work for Mindvalley, right? So who else better than them on teaching things that are not necessarily the more traditional ones, and that they're skills as well, right? That you learn. But I still think that all of that knowledge that you acquire academically, all those courses that you do, ultimately bring you up to speed with new things that are happening. And as a marketer, once again, it's about understanding the behavior and changing behavior. And customers are becoming every day much more complex, and they want more and they expect more. And there's multiple channels that are coming up all the time, and they're new. And we all need to be capable of understanding them and adopting them. And that's part of also, like going after the academic route to learn more about certain things. But I think the people is my biggest resource. And I'm so thankful once again, even if it's annoying to be thankful all the time. Thank you for everything that you teach me every day, and for all the opportunities of interacting with each other, and not only learning from each other, but also all the advices that you share with me, because you've seen the future and you already know how it looks. So I appreciate very much when people share their experience with me, because they're saving me time in my own journey.
Incredible. I love that. I wanted to thank you for your time. I'm loving this conversation, and I'm going to leave the last minutes for you, Adriana, to share anything you want to share with us, and also where people can find you. And we are going to link to the description of this episode, everything you're sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Thaisa. It was so exciting to meet you today, and you're such a pleasure to work with. And I think what my message should be is, yes, we can have it all. And no, I'm not special. I'm just a girl like you guys, and common person who does common things and enjoys simple things. And it's about believing in yourself. It's about having that support group, support network to also make you believe when you lose your track, when you lose your path, because it happens often. Um, and ultimately, I think these days that I'm older, I think about my legacy a lot. And I think about what am I gonna leave behind that my kids are gonna be proud of? And I don't want it to only be a LinkedIn page. I want it to be people. I want to affect people. I want them to feel proud. And I would like to invite you guys to analyze what you have to offer as well, because each one of us could be a mentor on different areas. And maybe visit the page of upnotch.com, which is the platform that I use and that I collaborate with. And consider becoming a mentor or maybe becoming a mentee. Why not, right? And it's a platform that I believe in, that I actually mentor the founder, who, by the way, is a woman, myself, and that I know it's real, and that I know it's there to really create a social impact. So I invite you guys to follow it. I invite you guys to register and check it out. And most importantly, if you want to follow me, and if you want to read a little bit more on the topics that I talk about on LinkedIn, with the help of somebody that manages my LinkedIn. I just told Thaisa my secret. Magdalena, who will be listening to us, manages my PR, and it's my voice became my voice on LinkedIn. But it speaks about the topics that I'm truthful to and close to. So please follow me on LinkedIn, and I'm under Adri Pirela. And yes, it's not Adriana on purpose, because I'm very authentic. I'm myself. And I like to be a close, friendly person. And yes, people call me by my nickname, from presidents of big companies, $1,000 million revenue, to Patrick and in the entrance of our building that I have the pleasure to work with. So that's that. That's it for me.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Thaisa. And hopefully we'll see each other again, maybe in a mentorship session.
Yeah.